Okay, welcome. While we're still waiting for everyone to arrive, I suggest, if you don't already have a paper and pen, to go ahead and get that, because you're probably going to want to take some notes. We're going to be talking about a lot of really deep things. I'm going to be asking you to do some practices and exercises, and I think you'll want to hold your notes afterwards and look at them again. So go ahead and just get some paper and pen if you don't already have it. And I'm going to wait for you to do that while people are still arriving. Okay, so welcome to Reclaim Your Feminine Power. And this is a 90-minute training where we are going to look at our definitions of power and how we may have internalized masculine definitions of power and leadership, and start to explore how we can connect more to our feminine energy and allow our feminine to be what guides and leads us, so that we can be leading from a feminine energetic space and really understand what is feminine power and how is that different than masculine power. And one of the keys, right off the bat, one of the most important things about connecting to your feminine energy is actually to be in your body. So there's a course that I teach, and it's called Embodied Feminine Leadership, because this embodiment is one of the most important qualities of really being a powerful leader, actually being someone who's connected to your power and being in your feminine at the same time. So with that in mind, what I would like to do is take the first couple moments to actually come a little bit more into our bodies together, so that you can be participating from that embodied instinctual place. We are so in our mind all the time, attached to our devices. And even right now, we're connecting through the airways on computers and smartphones. So it's really helpful to just do a simple practice to become a little more embodied before we begin. So go ahead and close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, I invite you to just drop your awareness into your pelvis. See if you can allow yourself to become aware of the parts of your body that are making contact to the seat beneath you. And as you notice those parts of your body that are making contact with the seat beneath you, notice if you're holding any tension or tightness there, and see if you can just give permission to soften. Another key part about being in our feminine is to be able to soften. So not holding yourself in tension. So soften into the support that's beneath you. So there is a seat of some sort beneath you. And for those of you that are just arriving, I see more people arriving moment by moment. We're just doing a simple practice to allow ourselves to become a little more embodied before we begin this training, just to become present in the body. So with your eyes closed, we're all connecting to the parts of our body making contact with the seat beneath us. And we're breathing into these areas. So feeling your butt cheeks, feeling your thighs, and giving permission for softening and receiving support, the support of the chair beneath. And imagine that with each breath, it's like you're bringing a flame to candle wax, and you're softening and melting these parts of your body. So you're feeling your butt cheeks melt. You're feeling your thighs melt. And you can even bring that awareness, keeping your eyes closed, bringing that awareness into the whole pelvic floor. So feeling your sexual organs, also softening. This is another key ingredient for being able to connect to your feminine energy, is to be able to really feel your sexual energy and your sexual organs. All right, so just taking a couple more breaths there. And I want you to drop a cord of connection from the center point in your pelvis. That's your perineum. I want you to drop a cord of connection and allow it to feel that it's dropping through the seat beneath you, through the floorboards beneath you, dropping into the basement of the building you're in, dropping into the earth, and allowing yourself to feel that cord of connection drop all the way to the very center of the earth and wrap itself around. And I want you just to take a couple of deep breaths in and feel that you're actually renewing yourself and you're bringing energy from the earth in through your core, through your feminine instinctual self in the base of your pelvic floor. Just taking in a couple of deep breaths there and allowing whatever sensation you have to be present. And then you can slowly open your eyes and bring yourself back into the space. And I welcome you here to this conversation we're going to have today about feminine power. And, you know, when I think about power, I think as intelligent women, we know that we can be feminine and powerful. We get that in our intellect. However, because our culture is constantly, subtly and not so subtly, giving us information that says that that's not true, it's hard for us to actually hold that. So on an instinctual primal level, many of us actually don't believe that our feminine is powerful. And as I mentioned in the video that I had promoting this course and on the sign up page, I looked up recently online the synonym for the word powerful. And one of the first words that came up was manly. And along with that were other words like husky, brawny, Herculean, which Hercules is like a male god, like a male hero. And every single word that was there implied a masculine, kind of tense, bulky kind of vision of what power can be. And there was nothing there that implied that power could be something that's soft, that power could be something that is subtle, something that is feminine, something that is receptive, something that is surrendered. A lot of the qualities that we associate with feminine seem to be the antithesis of how power is defined in our culture. And as much as our intellect says, you know, this is the time of the woman, and I can be feminine and powerful, on a primal level, like in our reptilian brain, and actually in the fibers of our body and our being, we don't trust our feminine because we have subconsciously done the equation. Masculine equals powerful, feminine equals weak. So it's just not trustable. I'm not sure I can really trust that I'm going to be strong, that I'm going to be able to lead, that I'm going to be able to put food on the table, or I'm going to be able to show up in the ways that I'm supposed to if I lean into my feminine, if I allow her to be a predominant force that's in my body and in the forefront of my consciousness. So we actually disconnect from her, and we only allow her in certain places in our life. And even there, we have a tentative relationship with her. And this wreaks havoc. I have worked with women for over 10 years. I started off as a health and nutrition coach for women and really quickly began to recognize that whatever was going on with a woman's health, whatever was going on with her relationship with food, had much deeper roots, and that the root in every single situation was a disconnect to feminine. A disconnect to feminine power, feminine energy, and feminine soul, to be honest, because it's really a spiritual, soulful kind of crisis that women are in. And, you know, I've supported women who are doctors, who are, you know, really working in every sector of our culture. And I've seen it across the board in politics and entertainment. No matter where you're working, or even mothers, which we think of as being a very feminine role, we tend to lean into our masculine. And why this is such a crisis, and why this became really apparent to me working in health, is that this affects our health, and it affects every area of our life. So it deeply affects our physical health. We're out of touch with our hormones, with the rhythms, our natural feminine rhythms, cycles of nature. And that starts to wreak havoc in every area of our health. We burn ourselves out. That's a big one for so many women, is adrenal fatigue, burnout, exhaustion, depletion. And it's like we've just tapped ourselves out because we haven't, when we connect to our feminine, that's where we actually refuel ourselves. That's where we fill up our tank. And then this affects our emotional well-being deeply. It affects our relationships. Certainly affects our romantic relationships and partnerships, but it affects every kind of relationship that we have. And ultimately, as much as we think that leaning into our masculine is really serving us in our career, it ultimately really hurts our career too, because we get burned out. Because it becomes unsustainable. We can't keep going at that rate. And that's really what this epidemic is that I've seen. And I've experienced it myself. As much as I do this work has also really evolved out of my own experience. And I would say that I am someone who's actually naturally had a pretty good connection to my feminine energy in a lot of ways. And at the same time, I absorb these definitions from our culture. And when I really want to step things up in my career, I can fall into those same patterns. And it's really a huge crisis. And because I've seen this in myself, and I've seen it actually in the tribe of women that I am surrounded by, I'm friends with, my network of women are really, potent, powerful women who are also leaders. And I watched the same thing happen with them. And I'm really passionate about the fact that women are meant to guide and lead right now. We are meant to make an impact with our work, or even in our family life. As a mother, we're meant to make an impact as leaders. And the world at large needs this. And we're not able to do it if we don't connect to our feminine. Because, it's not about just women coming into roles of leadership if these women are tapped out, burnout, leaning into their masculine energy. It's about women actually embodying the feminine frequency so we can heal this imbalance that is happening in the world at large. So this crisis that I've been speaking about as something that's really, for individual women, how it's a crisis in their life, it's really a global, worldwide crisis. And I think that we can see where what has been the predominant paradigm we've been living in has been a wounded masculine. It's not, I want to be clear, it's not just that we're in the masculine, but it's actually wounded masculine that has been dominating worldwide. And I think one of the reasons that so many women and so many people were disturbed by Trump when he was elected, we had the Women's March, was because he represents, like in bold, like black and white, like what this wounded masculine paradigm is. He seems to represent that. And that paradigm is the paradigm of a rape culture, that has raped the planet of her resources, that is, raping women, not respecting and honoring the feminine in all her forms. And when I tap into that, it's almost like I can feel the earth weeping, for the pain and this wounded rape energy that has come at her. And I can feel it's like this sort of larger feminine consciousness on the planet for all of this horrible violence towards children and sexual violence towards women and children that has taken place on the planet. And this is an important time, and I believe that so many women really incarnated at this time in their own particular way, and men as well, but I'm really speaking to women right now, so I'm going to focus on that. At this time, because we're meant in our own small or big way to make a contribution to a new way of being, a new possibility. And that is the new paradigm that we have the possibility to step into. And so I'm really passionate about speaking to women who are our new paradigm leaders. And like I said, doesn't mean you have to stand on a soapbox and like be a, on a loudspeaker saying, I'm a feminine leader. Women that I work with are leading, just by how they're showing up in a different way as a doctor, or how they're showing up in a different way as a lawyer, or in whatever, and I believe women specifically came to kind of infiltrate all these different industries. I'm in LA, and so the entertainment industry is here. Really important industry to infiltrate with new voices and new perspectives. But I believe that so many women are here right now in order to help guide us into that new paradigm. But we can't do that until we become into right relationship with the feminine within ourselves. So when we are not honoring, respecting, listening to, and embodying the feminine energy within ourselves, we can't really make the impact in whatever way we're meant to make it in our life. We're not able to really help guide into the new paradigm. And this guiding into the new paradigm is something that's literally a moment by moment thing that, like I said, it could be some large way that you have a message that you want to get out into the world, but it could just be in a little interaction with one person in your life in a single moment. How you navigate that and how you lead in that moment is a decision of, am I going to be in this old paradigm or in this new paradigm, which is a paradigm of love and a paradigm that's honoring, respecting all these other forms of power, right? So we have this old wounded masculine paradigm that we've been living in that defines power a certain way, and it has this like brawny, Herculean, bulky. And then we understand, okay, wait, what are these other forms of power, and how can I embody and lead from that place? And one thing that I think is really important for us to understand is that the patriarchy, which is this wounded masculine paradigm, is not just out there. This is actually something that we have internalized within ourselves. So we internalize the wounded masculine paradigm and play it out. And when I was preparing the material for this webinar the other day, I was sitting in a restaurant and I wrote those words down, and this was not a new thought to me, but there was something about the way it came through in that moment that I just got chills up and down my body, and I started to kind of shake, and the sound came out of me like, oh! And it was just like, whoa, this is one of the really important things for us to recognize as women, is how we have internalized the patriarchy. And yes, it is out there, and it's important if we feel called to show up at a march, or write a blog, or put ourselves out there, or point a finger at the things that we see out there that are wrong. And at the same time, I really believe that the change is going to happen. That saying, like, be the change that you want to see. Be the change that you want to see. Being energy. Who are you being? What frequency and what vibration are you living in? One of the things that happens is that in the anger, which is certainly deserved and righteous about some of these things, sometimes when we play out these old ideas of power, these old, forcible ways that we're expressing it. And what And there are moments, absolutely, I want to just say, put a little like tack on this right here. I am not saying that anger and being outspoken and strong in that way is something that we should not do. I believe that there are certainly times that is appropriate. And at the same time, in a day-to-day way, I think that it's more impactful for us to be living embodiments of what we want to see and of what feminine power is. And that's what we're going to get into in a few moments, because we actually don't know what that is many times. Like, we need to learn that. And that's what we're going to get into today. Before we do that, I feel like there's value in spending a little bit of time just with going into the way that we've internalized the patriarchy, okay? Or the wounded masculine paradigm is another way of saying it. So that rape culture, that bully culture, we have internalized that. And I want to say that the reason that we internalize that is a form of protection. So, I'm getting so many chills. I'm getting so many chills right now. Like, this conversation is so important. As little girls, when we were these soft, feminine, open-hearted, loving beings, we looked around and we felt what kind of a world we had been born into. We felt the frequency, the vibration of this rape culture, this bully culture, this, kind of pushing, tense idea of what power and strength was and what was going to be demanded of us. And that feminine within us probably didn't feel very safe. And in order to feel safe, we wanted to protect her. So we internalized these different characters to keep us safe. So we bullied ourselves a little. We became a drill sergeant. I'm seeing these characters in my mind that we've all seen, like in either in real life or like in movies, that drill sergeant, be strong, get in line, that kind of thing. Or that bully. We internalized those characters, and in order to kind of protect her, like, don't let them see you're feminine. She's not safe. And I would love for you right now to close your eyes and take a moment to just breathe into and feel, what ways have I internalized these wounded masculine characters? What ways have I internalized this paradigm and been playing it out within myself? And, one of the ways that we internalize the rapist is the times that we've done something sexually that we didn't really want to do. In essence, we kind of raped ourselves. Like, we weren't ready, we weren't open, and we pushed ourselves. The times that we've whipped ourselves really hard and judged ourselves around deadlines and work and expectations. So just feeling into those ways that you have internalized the patriarchy. And I want you to see if one of those characters is coming forward for you really strong. And I want you to invite yourself to really see that character. So see that bully or that drill sergeant or that rapist or whatever version is coming forth for you. And just really look into the eyes and thank that part of yourself for the ways that it has protected you. And also say, you know what? I want to let you release some of this. You don't have to be so harsh with me anymore. I'm a grown woman. I'm ready to soften. And you can let this part know that you're going to give other tasks, other ways that it can show up, and that you're grateful for the ways that it has protected you. So spend a few moments just connecting with this part of yourself, this internalized, wounded masculine. And then you can go ahead and write down on some paper anything that is coming forth from you out of that experience. And I want to offer that this is something that you can go back to. I just wanted to give you a little taste of what it's like to connect to this like internalized patriarchy character. And this is something that you may just like over the next few days just sort of feel come through and recognize, and kind of you can just relate with this part of yourself. Now, how do we start to shift this? How do we become really new paradigm feminine leaders, or become a woman who's living in feminine power? Well, we start to understand what is power as defined through the feminine. And we start to come into better relationship with the feminine within ourselves. And we start to understand that feminine and power do go together. Really, for thousands of years, we have been living in this paradigm that has told us that that's not the case. So where do we look? How do we discover what is feminine power? So out of the work that I was doing supporting women, originally through health and nutrition, and then just going kind of deeper and deeper with the women I worked with, and I discovered that it was really this kind of soul level crisis with the feminine that was going on. I was also in my own path, my own journey, and I realized that in spiritual tradition that I had been exposed to and grown up around, God was always defined as male. And if we want to just go into the deepest recesses of our psyche and feel into how do we define power, where does that come from? It's like, what is more powerful than God? And as long as God is defined as masculine, there is a way that we as women feel other and separate from the divine and separate from power, and kind of left out. And what would come through my mind as I was sitting with a woman that I was supporting, like the first time we were meeting, and she would be kind of telling me what was going on for her in her life, I would look into her eyes and I would just see, wow, this woman is a goddess. Like, that was the word that came through. It was just like, gosh, she doesn't recognize she's a goddess. She's the power, the beauty, everything that I saw there. That was just the word that came through. And I had been on my own journey of exploring goddess stories, goddess culture, really need to understand what is a divine feminine path. And so I started to bring women together in groups and explore, what does it mean to be a goddess? And what came through really quickly was that it just really means that you're embodying feminine power, feminine divine power. And I started to recognize that really the goddess stories, which are mythologies that every culture has across the world has goddess stories, that these are really stories that were meant to be passed from mother to daughter to let her know what her feminine power is. And maybe even passed around in like tribal circles. These were more, a lot of these mythologies and stories came from oral cultures where people sat around the fire and they told these stories, and little girls got to hear and go, oh, that's a part of me. I can be powerful in that way. And so I started to do workshops with women, bringing them together and exploring different goddesses and really understanding the psychological archetype of the goddess, like where does she exist within our psyche, and also relating on a spiritual level, and also recognizing how do we relate to her on a physical level? How do we embody these goddesses? Eventually, over time, I started to lead some retreats, and I was about to lead a 7-day retreat in Costa Rica, and I was in meditation preparing. And during that retreat, I was going to spend 2 days with one archetype, and then 2 days with another, and then 2 days with another, and then 1 day where we brought it all together. And so it was these 3 archetypes, which were the sensual goddess, the warrior goddess, and the compassionate goddess. And so I was just preparing, I was sitting in meditation, and suddenly a triangle appeared. I saw myself in my mind's eye, and I saw a triangle in my body, and it lit up, and these 3 powers of the feminine were there. And in that moment, a download came through. And what I was being told is that this is actually a very complete model of feminine power, and that this is universal, and it's something that is repeated through cultures around the world, that there are 3 primary powers of the feminine. There are 3 primary forms of the goddess. And that when these are balanced as a woman, we become an embodiment of feminine power. We become an embodiment of the goddess. We're able to embody that divine feminine frequency, which is really the antidote to this wounded masculine paradigm that we're living in. So as women, it is divine feminine frequency that's really the healing antidote. When we're living and we're breathing and embodying that, that's how we become a new paradigm female leader. So as I'm sitting there and I'm seeing this triangle, it was just like all at once, all this information coming in. The base of the triangle was the sensual goddess and the warrior goddess. And that this is the inner yin and yang, the duality of the material world that we live in. That the sensual goddess, that's the deepest, most feminine aspect of the feminine, like what really defines the feminine. And the warrior goddess is the way the masculine energy is expressed through the feminine. It's not the same as being in your masculine, but a lot of the qualities that we associate with the masculine, it's a divine feminine expression of that. So that you are still feminine, but you're expressing that. So it's the inner yin and the yang for a woman. And then the point of the triangle was over my heart space, and that was the compassionate goddess. And that is this non-dual unifying energy that kind of, it's like almost like we take the base of the triangle, those energies get melded and moved upward and then transformed into just this pure love. And that this is a model of feminine power, again, that's universal, and that is something that can really be applied for us in our modern women's lives. And so this is something that I've been teaching women for the past, that was 2012, so really 6 years now. The first time I taught the course was in the fall of 2012. And it's really a journey that's taking us through to understand what does it mean to become an embodiment of feminine power. How do I awaken that within me? And it's through these 3 faces. Now, I want to do a little screen share so I can show you some of this. Before I do that, I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to say about that. Yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and do the share. We'll start. So I'm going to start. So one thing I do want to say is this, is that it is repeated through cultures. And that was the thing that I got, like, wow, this is really universal, is that every goddess culture that we have very much information around, you will see these repeated. There will be this trinity. There will be one goddess that is completely this like feminine, sensual goddess associated with bodies of water, fluidity, softness, flow. There'll be one goddess who is a warrior goddess that will have a weapon of some sort and be this like fierce, like cutting through things. And then there will be one that is just this heart-centered, compassionate mother, very often a mother figure. And so here I'll do a screen share so you can get to know some of these faces. Oops. Sorry, I'm having a little technical thing here. Where's the screen share? Start share. Okay. So, okay, so let's just move along here. Oh, this is the page from the dictionary. So here's the triangle. And so the base of the triangle is your feminine and your fierce. That's the inner yin, feminine, and masculine yang within ourselves. And we actually have a yin ovary and a yang ovary. We have so in some ways you can almost imagine that the points of the triangle and your two ovaries, and then, or the base of the triangle, and then the point coming up to the heart space, the free, compassionate goddess. And I'm going to talk to you first about the sensual goddess power. So the sensual goddess is repeated as Aphrodite, Lakshmi, Oshun in the African Yoruban tradition, and I'll show you some pictures in a moment. Now, how she plays out, when we've activated this aspect of our feminine power, this form of feminine power within ourselves, we are receptive, we're in the moment, we're connected to our feminine instincts, what brings us pleasure, we're aware of our desires, we know and we feel our juicy yes. Our tank is filled up. So it's really, when we talk about burnout, that so many powerful women experience, is that because this is not talked about as a power, and we don't value this in our culture, we don't feed this part of ourselves, and this is actually where we fill our tank. This is where we fuel ourselves. Our pleasure, our joy, our playfulness is actually how our tank gets filled. And when this tank is filled, when we're feeling rejuvenated, we become magnetic. We attract things to us. We attract allies, we attract support, we attract gifts, we attract abundance, money, prosperity. And this power is so strong that that is why it has been so pushed underground, is why we have been guilted and we have been shamed around it. There's literally a monastery in Greece that's the oldest monastery in the world, and they've never let a woman step foot on it. It's like thousands of years old, and it's because they feel like a female being there would distract the men from their spiritual practice. And this kind of thing plays out like in ashrams and all sorts of spiritual places, but not just even spiritual places, but there's a lot of these sort of men's clubs, places that haven't wanted to let the feminine in because they feel it's distracting. Because a woman connected to her pleasure, a woman who's in her body, a woman who is filled up, is magnetic. She draws things to her. And in our culture, there's a lot of ways that we've been exposed to a wounded expression of this. And that's kind of what we see played out in the media a lot, which is this very superficial kind of representation of this Aphrodite-like character. And a kind of a manipulation with that. And what the true form of this is very pure. It's like an innocence, erotic innocence, actually. And this is a picture of me there, like laying in this like field of flowers, like smelling these roses, just kind of being in this space of just presence to the senses. That's the sensual goddess. It's like the smells, the feels, there's an aliveness, there's an embodiedness that we have. And it serves us as leaders and as powerful women. And we have kind of tapped it down because we feel shameful about it, we feel guilty about it. And we've been told that, it's not safe. And so really the way that I work with women around this is to help you understand a safe way to own this. And it's interesting because I work with women sometimes who are like, one woman I'm recently in one of our sessions, she's a CFO of a company, actually COO. And she said, I can't believe I've been working with my sensual goddess, and then I go in and I'm having meetings with my team and everything's going so much better. And it's actually really serving me in my work in a way that I didn't think, because we think about this as just being like for romance and pleasure and our, romantic relationships. So here's Aphrodite, the Greek sensual goddess of erotic love and beauty. And there she is, just sprawled out, and there's a vulnerability, but there's a strength in it that she feels safe. And if you can see in her body, it's like there's not an ounce of tension, right? It's just like everything just feels so liquid to her. And of course, she's in the ocean. She is such like an epitome of this sensual goddess energy about love, beauty, pleasure, the moment. And then there's Lakshmi, who's a Hindu goddess of prosperity and abundance. And she's also a sensual goddess. And understanding that when we're in our receiving energy, when we're in our sensuality, that we attract and we magnetize. And it's actually through that space that we get to experience abundance. You can have a lot of money in the bank, but if you're actually not able to be alive in the moment and in your pleasure and your senses, you don't experience the abundance. So we're going to come back to the warrior goddess in a moment. I'm going to take us out of the screen share just to bring us back here. So that's the power of the sensual goddess. And when you're living in that energy, it's kind of like you're making love to life. And if you think of that feeling that you've had after a great night of sex, where you walk outside and you're like, anything could just roll off your back, and you feel like the red carpet got rolled out in front of you, and it's like the birds are chirping and everything feels so good and smooth and flowing. She brings that into our life. And what's really valuable about understanding this as an archetype and an aspect of your feminine power and your psyche is to recognize that you have access to this anytime, and that it's not dependent upon that guy that that you had the great sex with, that it doesn't attach to someone outside, that there's a way to activate that within yourself so that you can be living in that energy, in that flow much more of the time, and bringing that into areas of your life where you think that it wouldn't be appropriate. And it is, just in that way that you feel that flow. It's like you walk into the store and you're chatting with the person at the checkout, and everyone just is like wants to open the door for you. And there's just that flow because you're radiating in that way. We have access to that. There's actually, physical ways to activate that within ourselves, that energetic is moving through us. And we're meant to be in that much more in our life, even and like I said, even in work. So it's that and when you're there, you attract more of it, So it's like you attract more romance, more pleasure, more money. Everything comes to you when you're in that space. So that's one of your feminine powers that no one told you about, and that you were meant to learn and understand. And there's a story. I didn't have an image of Oshun, but she's the African Yoruban river goddess at the flow of this river, and she loves to dance, and she has a magical honey pot that is around her waist, and she dips into that honey pot and she can cast magical spells. So this is a form of your feminine power. And in her myth, she saves the world. And I won't go into the whole story right now, but it's like by hearing that story, and if you can imagine being a little girl, young woman hearing that, it's like, oh, this is an important thing. This is a superpower. Like, I'm a superheroine. When I access that, I help save the world. Whereas, one of the basic mythologies of our culture was Adam and Eve. And Eve's seductive energy was the downfall. Right? You got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And, in that story, women are going to be punished for eternity for this sin that they did. And so we're taught to be fearful of this part of ourselves, or to play it out in this dark, shadowy way. So that's one of your powers. It's so important to fill yourself, filling your tank. Now, on the other side of the base of the triangle is the warrior goddess. And that's where this is fire energy. So that was water and flow energy. This is fire. And it's important. We need that fire to keep things moving. It's fires of transformation and change. And it's vision, it's direction, it's our boundaries. So if we were only activated in our sensual goddess, that's great. But we need to be able to have boundaries around that too. So as a woman, you want to be able to access all of these at the same time. So the warrior goddess comes in, and yes, she's placing down the boundaries, and she's your no. So the sensual goddess helps you know what that juicy yes, like, what's my yes? What turns me on? And living your life by feeling what turns you on. The warrior goddess lets you know what is your no? What am I a no to? And the strength and the power and the courage to voice that no. And it's a lot about also like, what do I need to release? When we move through and we activate the warrior goddess, it's like cleansing practices. It's what do I need to release? It's going into shadow and having the courage to face our shadows and recognizing that so much of our fuel and power as a woman also resides in the places that we have pushed into the shadow. And, you know, really embracing your bitch, your holy bitch, not that kind of superficial bitchy quality, but understanding that there's sacred rage, that there is a time and a place for me to own this fiery power, and not be afraid that someone might think you're a bitch. And then I've written blogs about like the word bitch and where that comes from, and it's really fascinating and interesting, and it's great that I think embrace that as a woman sometimes. But it's also going into like, what are the things like I'm afraid of? What are the things I've just pushed into places I don't want to look at? And as long as those are pushed into shadows, it's like a huge part of yourself isn't being accessed. And so she gives us the courage to be able to go in there and own that, embody that. So I'm going to do another screen share here. And share. All right. So, okay. Oh, there we go. So this is the warrior goddess. I love this woman just sitting there, like, just so badass. And I feel like looking at her is like, just, you know, not to fuck with her. And that's kind of part of what the warrior goddess gives us. And to really own our feminine power is to unashamedly own all of these things. One of the things we've been taught is to access these in very superficial ways and only one at a time, and that they kind of don't go together. So it's like, oh, I can either be a sensual goddess or I can be a warrior goddess. And really this work, what I'm sharing with you, this model, is that no, you actually can own both of these. And that you don't have to, you know, you can own your sensuality, you can own this embodied, pleasurable place, and also own this warrior goddess. So when we're accessing the warrior goddess, like I said, owning your no, clear boundaries, clarity of vision, courage, speaking up, facing shadows, owning your anger, integrating your darkness, okay, being a bitch, and dancing with your wild woman. So a lot of times if you think, like if you're starting to like think about this, like who do I associate with more? Very often women that come to me associate with being a warrior goddess, say, oh, I know that. That's what I live in more, especially if you're like a career woman. And what I would offer is yes and no, because you have most likely been living it from more of a headspace, like a not embodied space, and only living out the certain parts of this that are more accepted by our culture. And the wild woman is the part that's really not as much encouraged in our culture. And the wild woman is really where you start to let the sensuality and the embodiment come in. And it's this kind of, like, I like this word, it's like almost like a feral, wild, like if you're just gonna kind of go out and be in the woods and like shriek and like, let yourself go. It's just like, and there's so much power that is in that part that we've tapped down. And again, it's fuel. It's like a lot of this is about fuel that's going to help you not be burnt out. When you start letting these pieces in, it really allows you to flourish. Here are a few fierce goddesses. So the first one is Sekhmet from Egypt, who is this lion-headed goddess that I just love. She's this fierce lioness. And then the middle, that's Oya, who is an African Yoruban goddess of lightning and thunderstorms. And you can just like really see the ferocity there in her. And then the last one, there's Artemis, who is a goddess of the hunt from the Greek and Roman tradition. And then here's Durga. Durga is a Hindu warrior goddess who's all about truth, boundaries, and courage. And here she is in this moment of beating this demon Mahishasur, and her story is really, really great. And with these mythologies, what's really interesting is that you learn this story, and there's a way that you can start to practically apply it in your life. Like, oh, I'm going to be very Durga-like in this way. And then there are ways that you can access her to kind of almost call her in. And you can think of that as being a spiritual thing. Like, I'm calling in this deity. I'm going to call in Durga for her protection or for her guidance. Or you can still relate to her, even just as an aspect of your psyche. But in her story, she's really all about cutting through the illusions of the ego mind. And really, when we're working with her energy, we're just surrendering to truth. I just want to be in my truth. Let me embody truth. I'm going to take us out of the screen share for a moment. Sorry, I get caught sometimes. Where's this stuff? So that's the base of the triangle, and this is like the fire and the water energy. It's your warrior goddess, your sensual, your yin and your yang, your masculine, feminine. And when you start to own these energies, you become embodied. So I was just speaking about the fact that there's an archetypal sort of behavioral, mental way that we relate to these goddess powers and these archetypes. And then there is this kind of spiritual, psyche, soul level way that we connect. And then there's the physical, that these are actually accessed through our bodies. And they each, are basically a seat of consciousness. So it's like when you activate this goddess power within you, you're activating alternate brains, alternate consciousness within yourself. So we're so focused in our culture on the idea of our consciousness and our mind being in the head. And we become so in our head. And that's actually where a lot of our fears come from, is that when we're circling with thoughts around in our head, or anxieties, or even depression, it's all a disconnect to the body. And connecting to these powers, why it's an embodiment process, is understanding that there are actually these seats of consciousness and alternate brains within the body that you can activate. So the compassionate goddess, who we're about to speak of in a moment, is the heart. And we've heard in our culture, we use these words like, what does your heart say? Listen to your heart, follow your heart. And so we understand that there is consciousness in the heart space, that it actually can be something that we're led by, that communicates to us. And then the warrior goddess is located in the gut. And again, that's something that we talk about in our culture. What are your gut instincts? Listen to your gut. And I would actually offer that for us as women, it's womb. It's even deeper, but we start with the gut. And it's getting that like, oh yeah. And we even in science now have discovered that there is an enteric brain, gut brain. We're seeing there is consciousness. We actually have a brain and consciousness within the gut. And that is where the warrior goddess is located. And I kind of think of it as like where her temple is in her body. It's a state of consciousness. We're activated, we're living from our gut, we're breathing in the gut. And that's where people can feel. Like when I say that, you look at that woman, don't talk with her. You can feel when you're activated in that place, you have your boundaries actually come out from there. People can feel that and be like, okay, I'm not going to mess with that. When you're disembodied, people can't feel your power as well. Now, the sensual goddess is the one that we don't talk about the brain, at least not for women. And that is your sexual center. It's your sexual organs. And in some ways you could say it's like your pussy brain. And she is a seat of consciousness. There is a brain there. And she's all about letting you know what turns you on, what brings you pleasure, and what do you really want, what do you really desire. And working with so many women, one of the things I've noticed is that we can get disconnected. Sometimes we're so, either as a mother or in our work life, we're so focused on producing and doing what we're supposed to do that we start to even lose touch with what we desire and what we want. And she really lets us know loud and clear. So if it's making a decision about, what color of car you want to get, listen to her. There's an oracle. It's like an oracle between your legs that you can consult. There is consciousness there. And that's the embodiment part of this process, is to really, I share different practices, and we'll do one in a few moments, that start to activate this body awareness and start to activate these seats of consciousness and allow you to start to become a woman who's embodying these powers. So it's like understanding it's like an archetype. It's this thing that I'm thinking about. It's this thing I'm applying in behavioral ways in my life to be more like an Aphrodite today, or more, in my Durga. And it's this having a relationship on some level with her outside the self, and then also recognizing how I can activate her within my own body and myself. Now, the final one that I'm going to share with you is the compassionate goddess. And this is the heart. When the heart gets activated, and this is also very often the mother, Mother Mary, Isis, or Isis is really the proper pronunciation, from Egypt. And Kuan Yin, who's the Buddhist goddess of compassion. I'll show you a picture of her in a moment. But it's this unconditional love, this activation of the heart. And when this is alive with us, when we're embodying this, there's a generosity. We're very loving and gentle with ourselves. There's a magnetism that comes from this as well, that people can really feel you as love and are drawn to that. And there's a charisma that comes from that. And people want to support you from that place. When you've activated it within yourself, you also feel trusting. You feel trust in something like a higher power, something beyond yourself. You feel supported, and you're trusting of others. There's a self-assuredness that comes from that, a feeling of where you tap into synchronicities, you feel lucky. It's like you're really tuned into these subtle kind of miracle-making energies from this place when the heart is activated. And so we have Mother Mary here. The middle, that's Yemaya, who's the African Yoruban compassionate goddess, mother goddess. And that's Tara there. And then here's Kuan Yin, who's the Buddhist goddess of compassion, purity, and gentleness. And you can just feel when you see her image, it's just like this softness. And they say Kuan Yin was the goddess who heard the cries of the world, she who hears the cries of the world. And she was she was so developed in her spiritual practice, she was a bodhisattva who was about to attain full Buddhahood, which means that she would leave the sort of the samsara of human condition of suffering and where people keep reincarnating. And she was about to walk through the door, and she said, wait, she heard people crying and suffering. And she said, I can't go while others are still suffering. So I'm going to stay on this side and devote myself to supporting any humans that are in suffering. So there's this incredible, just unconditional love and support. So she's someone you can call upon in a moment where it's just like, I don't know what to do. I just have to surrender. It's a lot about what opening the heart and accessing the compassionate goddess is. It's just surrendering. And she's also, there's such a gentleness in her that calls forth being really, really gentle with yourself. Okay, stop. Sorry, I'm just having a little tech thing where the little arrow will let me hit the stop share button. Okay. There we go. Nope. Oh. Okay, there we go. All right. So sorry about that. So there you have it. These are the three powers. So for you to really be embodying feminine power, as I spoke about at the top of the class, it's like, to be this woman who steps into a space and really raises the frequency and leads by her presence, you become a woman who is embodying this divine feminine frequency, this antidote to the wounded masculine paradigm we live in. And that means you're embodying feminine power, which means to be in your senses, in your sensuality, unapologetically owning that, and being a woman who is in this fiery place of people know not to fuck with you. Your boundaries are clear. Your vision is clear. You speak your truth clearly. And to bring all that energy up into the heart and to be living as an embodiment of love. So that fierceness and that juicy rejuvenated sensuality is all being channeled through the heart ultimately, so that you're living in love from this place. And it's from there that you can be exquisitely vulnerable and at the same time invincible. And that's what true power is. I want you just to feel into that for a moment. We've been taught that true power is sort of the wounded warrior goddess, this leaning into the wounded masculine definition of power, is armored, strong, like tight, tense, all this tension there and stiffness. And it's interesting, those were the kinds of words that did come up in the synonym. And here we're starting to understand that power can be exquisite softness and vulnerability, and there can be a strength in that at the same time that's invincible. And that's really the energy of the heart when it's fueled by these other powers. And the embodiment work that we do is to start filling the tank in the sensual goddess energy, bringing that up through the gut fire in the womb, and then raising that energy up all the way through the heart so that it becomes blasted open. And people can feel the love from there. And that's really the embodiment side of the process of becoming a woman who's living as an embodiment of feminine power. Now, I just mentioned a wounded warrior goddess, so I just want to take a moment to talk about the wounded expression of each of these. So I've been talking to you about the divine expression, and just like there's the wounded masculine paradigm we've been living in, there's also a divine masculine, and there's a wounded feminine and a divine feminine. So just to be in feminine isn't necessarily great, it's you want to be the divine feminine. The wounded expression of each of these, it tends to happen when you're not activating the other powers. So when you're in your sensual goddess, but you haven't accessed your compassionate or your warrior goddess, you're going to be living in the wounded version. They're all dependent upon each other. They all relate to each other. And like a wounded version of the sensual goddess would be, you're kind of accessing your sensuality, but you don't know how to place down boundaries. So you're going to be in a lot of pain there. You don't know how to say no, or you don't know how to put yourself forward in strong ways in the world, and the kind of direction that comes from the warrior goddess. Or you don't know how to really access your heart. That would be a wounded expression of that. Another way that is actually a wounded expression is just living into our culture's very superficial idea of what the sensual goddess is. So again, being in LA, this is something that I can see a lot, which is where women are putting on this sort of sensual goddess feminine kind of mask over themselves. It has a lot to do with like having the hair done and the makeup right and the Botox and the not that there's anything wrong with that, but like overly done, and focusing on the clothes, and you may not even actually be embodied in your own pleasure, but you're aware of being under the male gaze. That's a wounded expression of that. It's like, how am I being perceived, or can I use that in a manipulative kind of way to get what I want? That's the wounded expression. The wounded expression of the warrior goddess is overly armored, intense, and not letting anything in. That's all I need to say about that. It's just like you're and kind of in the head, not in the body, but a lot of tension, a lot of harshness, a lot of pushing, and not allowing things in. You're not balanced with your sensual goddess, and you're not embodied. That's the other way they really become wounded, is just when they're not embodied. And the compassionate goddess, we see this a lot, is actually a martyr. That's the wounded expression. It's like you're connecting to the giving part. I'm going to be so generous and give, but you don't give yourself. You're not soft and gentle with yourself. You don't receive in. You're not filling your tank with pleasure and sensuality. You're not good at saying no and putting down boundaries and speaking your real truth. And then you suffer. You become a victim. And so what's so vital for women at this time is to move out of victimhood and into full power, out of wounded expressions into full power, and an ability to balance and embody all of these at the same time. Now, what I would like to do right now is actually take a moment to do an embodiment practice so you can get a little experience of this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go ahead and close your eyes, wherever you are. Close your eyes and begin to tap back into your body. Like we did at the top of the class, I asked you to just start to tune into the parts of your body that are making contact with the seat beneath you. So once more, feeling your butt cheeks, feeling your thighs, and allowing your breath to bring softening, like flame to candle wax, softening those parts of your body. And then bringing that energy into the pelvis even, and feeling the softening of the sexual organs, feeling the softening of the whole pelvic floor. And then accessing your perineum. And the perineum is the very center point of your pelvic floor. And from there, dropping that cord. We're going to drop that cord of connection through the seat beneath you. You're going to drop it through the floorboards, down to the basement of the building you're in. You're going to let it continue to go into the earth, through the soil, down through Mama Earth, this mineral-rich, juicy soil. This cord of connection drops all the way to the center of the earth. And when it reaches the center of the earth, it wraps around this molten lava center of the earth. This Shakti. Shakti is a word for feminine creative life force. This Shakti-filled core of the earth. And just taking in a couple of breaths and feeling yourself rejuvenated by this energy, moving, your pelvis is intimately connected to the core of the earth, and just feeling the rejuvenation, the flow of energy between them. And now I'm going to teach you a little breathing practice. And what we're going to do is we're going to inhale through the nose on a count of 4. You can keep your eyes closed and just listen. And then we're going to exhale out through the mouth on a count of 8. And when you exhale out through the mouth, actually we're going to hold, sorry. You're going to inhale, and then we're going to hold. And then on the count of 8, exhale out. And I call it a Darth Vader breath. There's a little bit of a contraction in the back of the throat, and it sounds like there's no pushing. It's not. It's just like how you're kind of allowing it, like steam rising through the pipes. You're just allowing this breath to come up. And the contraction in the back of the throat kind of thickens it, almost like a milkshake. So we're going to begin this breathing together. We're going to inhale in through the nose. And then we're going to hold. And then we're going to exhale out through the mouth, the Darth Vader breath. Very gentle. Inhale in through the nose. Hold. And exhale out. And this next inhale in through the nose, but also imagine you're inhaling in through your sexual center, in through that cord. And then hold. And then exhale out. Next breath, inhaling in through the sexual center. Just imagining that you're able to breathe in through there. And then holding for a moment. And when we exhale, exhaling that energy, imagine it's just infiltrating through your whole womb and abdomen and starting to penetrate through the body. This beautiful energy that you're pulling up from the core of the earth. And then next breath, we're going to inhale in through your sexual center, holding, and then exhaling. And we're going to pause for a moment. And I want you just to let your body move in whatever way it wants to move gently. Feel whatever experience. If you're feeling sensation in your pelvis, like just allow that sensation to be there. And next, what we're going to do is a little bit of pelvic rocking to bring in some fire. And what we're going to do is we're going to inhale as we rock the pelvis forward, and you tip. You're going to feel your like slight arch in your back. And then you're going to tip the tailbone back and exhale. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In as you go forward, out as your back goes convex backwards. Inhaling, you feel that concave. Tipping the pelvis forward and back, forward and back. And I want you to go at your own rate. And the point of this is to really let that animal instinct in the pelvis take over, almost like you're riding a horse. And you want to let her just take the reins and go. What we're doing here is we're activating, giving ourselves permission to start to come back into the body. This is the place where we've stuffed emotions that we don't want to feel, shadows that we don't want to face, sensations, sexuality, things that we're ashamed about, and we want to let that start to come back in. This is where so much of our resource of our feminine power resides. So letting the pelvis just guide that, and then eventually you'll kind of come to a climax, so you can come to stillness. And then with your eyes closed, I'm going to just play a little bit of music here for a moment, and I want you to just let your body move in whatever way it wants to move. And notice you might feel some kind of like golden light and elixir, a kind of energy that is gathering and pooling in your pelvis, kind of lighting you up. And just letting that energy just start to dance and move around. You might do a little bit of circling in the pelvis, or a little bit of forward and back motion. And then maybe it wants to move up a little bit into the belly, into the low back, into the middle back, solar plexus. Feeling this energy. This is this life force, feminine energy that's fueling your tank and softening. She's moving through. It's like the goddess herself going through where you're stiff, where you have armoring, and just softening. Letting it start to move up, even through the heart space. And then back behind the heart. Into the shoulder blades. Tops of the shoulders, the sternum, the throat, back the neck, all the way up to the crown of the head. And you can imagine this golden liquid light, this feminine essence is now just showering through the top of your head, back over you, and you're reabsorbing it. And just letting yourself absorb it back in and just move and live in your own little dance here for a moment. Just feeling yourself bathed in this golden goddess juice and elixir, which is just really your own life force energy. Renewing yourself. All right. So that's just a little taste. You can go ahead and open your eyes. That's just a little taste of some of this embodiment practice and what it can feel like. To start to come home into your body and activate some of these instincts. Now, I obviously feel like there's so much more I could share with you about these powers and about how it becomes activated in your life. And I want to let you know that I have a course that is going to be starting very soon. And this is my kind of classic journey through your feminine power, through these 3 faces of your feminine power. And I've led it now over 15 times in the past 6 years, and hundreds of women have gone through it. And it's truly a life-changing experience for women. It gives you a whole new language, a whole new way of relating to yourself as a woman, and can activate areas of your life that you wouldn't even expect to see. You're going to open up things in your relationships, in your career, in your health. It's truly a very special experience. So it's now, for the first time, I'm going to be offering it virtually. So prior to this, I led very intimate circles in New York and in LA in person. And now I've decided that I really want to offer it to women all across the country, even the world, through virtual practice. So it is a 12-week course that goes through. We spend 3 weeks with our feminine goddess, 3 weeks with the warrior goddess, and 3 weeks with the compassionate goddess. So I'm going to do a little screen share just to show you some of the information about it. Sorry. All right, screen share. All right. So week 1. So the first 2 weeks are what I call the foundation. And this is where we start to come home to the body temple in week 1. And this is where we make a commitment to being embodied into presence and living in alignment with ourselves, because that's really what a lot of this work is about, is becoming in alignment with your own self. So we start with some simple detox practices. There's breath work, which you got a little taste of right now, and creating a morning physical ritual that starts to be an embodiment practice that you'll do every day. And then week 2 is creating sacred space in your home. So again, this is all about the foundations, understanding that if you want to live truly in alignment in your feminine power, we also have to have a space that's supportive of that. And also really understanding that we're starting to bring our attention inward instead of outward. So your home, your body temple, your home temple, your inner world and environment. And there's a goddess, Greek goddess Hestia, who work with that week, who is the goddess of the hearth and the home fire. So we're going to do simple home clearing practices and focus on creating a personal creative altar space and start to go into the 3 faces of our feminine power. And then week 3 is when we dive into the sensual goddess. And this is where it starts to get very juicy. We open to your erotic innocence, and this is the goddess power Aphrodite. So we'll learn about Aphrodite, how to become Aphrodite in our own life. And this has to do with permission to be fully plugged in and turned on, giving yourself permission to feel that level of juiciness and sensation, getting connected to your yes, letting yourself start to receive support, receiving really in all areas, and full focus on your pleasure and immersing into the now. And then week 4 is the goddess power Oshun, which is unleashing the positive powers of sacred seduction. She's the goddess with the golden honey pot that she casts magical spells out of, which saves the world. So it's starting to understand how to fill ourselves up even more with pleasure, our sensuality as our superpower that serves the world, and using magnetism to get what you want with ease. We're going to do practice where we activate that honey pot in yourself so that you can draw support like bees to honey. And then week 5 is the goddess power Lakshmi, which is all about abundance and prosperity. And so that's mastering your magnetism, attracting prosperity with your feminine energy. So starting to understand the connection actually between your sexual energy and prosperity, getting a very personal vision of your prosperity consciousness. What is your own personal prosperous vision? Going deep into getting connected to that, living in that now. And then we're going to do sensual self-care rituals that increase your magnetism. And then week 6 is when we start to delve into the warrior goddess. So this is embracing the force and direction of your personal vision and goals. And this is goddess power Artemis. She's the Greek goddess of the hunt. So this is feeling your gut instincts and harmonizing your assertive masculine direction with your feminine womb-centered lunar side, tuning into the moon energy. She's also goddess of the moon and the womb, balancing solar and lunar energies. And we're going to do some practices that activate the womb and help you to start to really feel the voice of your womb, to become a womb-centered woman and activate that aspect of your feminine power. Week 7, this lady I love, speaking your deepest truth. This is goddess power Durga. That's the Hindu warrior goddess that you saw the slide of. Activating your voice, speaking your truth, placing down boundaries with ease, being okay saying no to others, harnessing your anger for transformation. And I'm going to introduce you to the principles of transformation, which are some very specific principles that you apply in your life when you want to transform something. Fire of transformation energy. And then week 8, we start to go into the wild woman and the shadow. So merging with your shadow, embracing the power of your wild woman. So embracing your inner bitch, unleashing your wild side, merging with that shadow, non-duality and non-judgment as a leader. And this is the goddess power Kali, Hindu goddess, and Oya. These are the very intense, fierce goddesses. And then week 9, we move into the compassionate goddess. And at this point, it's like we're primed ourselves perfectly to really step deeply into self-love, because we've now really filled ourselves up. We've owned our sensuality. We've been starting to face our shadows, and now the heart, we move that energy upwards, the heart becomes activated. So first we start with bringing that heart energy to you. You got to bring love to yourself first. So moving through your shame to find self-love, practices for compassion, gentleness towards yourself, and learning how to really let your heart lead. And this is the goddess power, Kuan Yin, who we saw the slide of earlier. And then week 10 is surrender, and this is Mother Mary. So really starting to understand your vulnerability as your strength, that ability to hold simultaneously vulnerability and invincibility. Surrendering the need to control. This is a huge one for us as women. Learning to manifest gently through the subtle energy field instead of pushing and forcing, and asking for support and softening to receive it. Week 11, integration of your strong, sexy, and compassionate self. This is the goddess power, Isis from Egypt, or Isis. And this is integrating your softness and your strength, harmonizing your heart energy with your sexual energy, and really feeling the strength of the heart. And then week 12, this is our final week, and this is bringing it all together. And here is where we focus on how you're going to bring this out into the world and crafting a personal plan to help you keep integrating as you move forward and keep implementing these practices in your life. I've taught this course so many times, and what I've seen is women's lives take off during these 12 weeks. It's incredible what opens up and what happens. And there's usually a very short period of time that they continue the practices and they continue going with it. But if you don't, the women, I notice, like the women that don't kind of craft a plan and continue to implement it, some of the, what transformed, what transpired in the course will stick to a certain degree, but you're not going to keep the momentum going. So what we're going to do in the final week is really help you craft a plan that's personalized for yourself, that's going to keep that momentum moving forward. And so it's 12 weekly live video classes with Q&A, and it will be through Zoom. The difference with this is it's a smaller group, so it won't be in a webinar format. It'll be in a format where we can all see each other on video, and there'll be a live Q&A at the end of every class. We also are going to have a portal online where there'll be a lot of additional audios and videos. And these will be different physical practices and exercises for you to do at home on your own, and that you can implement in your own practice. There's a private Facebook group, which is great, where women get on there to support each other. And then there's a buddy system, which is really, I think, helpful for most women too, is to feel that you're not alone in this, that you have someone that you're in conversation with about it and going through the process together. And if you don't want that, you don't have to have that. But for most women, that's really valuable. And the dates are September 26th. So it's starting this coming Wednesday. We already have a really amazing group of women coming together. I'm just so excited. Just some really powerhouse women. It's starting Wednesday, and it's every Wednesday except we skip Halloween. And so that has us ending with the 12th class on December 19th. And for the details, you can go to my website, urbangoddessretreats.com, and I'll show you that in a moment, how there's a drop-down menu. You can click on that. Embodied Feminine Leadership is the course, and there's a lot of detail there. It goes through, again, telling you what's happening in each week of the class. And there you go. And the price for that is $9.99. And there's an early bird, which is $8.88, which I'm extending. It was officially ended last night at midnight, but I'm extending it, since we added in one more webinar, until midnight tonight. And there are also payment plans available that you can pay it over a 3 or 4 month period. And that includes all of that, the 12-week of classes, the Facebook group, the buddy support, the additional audios and videos, and you'll have access to that for a full year after the course ends. So you can continue to work with those practices and watch the videos again and again, unlimited. There's also upgrades available. So if you find that you're someone who really likes a little extra personal support, and you have some things that you feel like you'd like to talk about one-on-one, I have a really great package that I created where it's over $1,300 worth of value for $888 also as an upgrade. And that gives you 4 private sessions with me, plus a welcome package where you're going to get the course manual in a printed out form. You're going to get a journal, and then you're going to get a bunch of packages that have extra little products like teas and self-care products that go in alignment with the different weeks of like the focus of each week of class. And then you also are going to have 1 follow-up session in addition to the 4 that happen during the class, during the course time. You'll have 1 follow-up session that'll happen about a month after the class ends to see that you're continuing to move forward. So if you have any questions for me, there's a live chat here, and you can go ahead and type any questions in there. Any questions you have about any, like the physical practice I did, the goddesses, anything I've talked about in today's class, or anything about the upcoming course. One thing I also want to let you know is that I have opened up 4 spots with a partial scholarship. And there's an application process that you can fill out if you're interested. And this is specifically for women who are very interested and know that they would love to do the course. And it's really that they just have a financial concern happening in their life, like that they just can't do it. If you're someone that could do it, but you're like, it'd be great to get a discount, it's not for you. It's really to support women who just don't have the funds, because that's one thing I'm really passionate about, is I want to make this is available. And that's one of the reasons I decided to do this online instead of just in person, is because in person, it's more high touch, but it's just a lot more expensive, is to really make this accessible for women. I see someone just posted a question. Let me see what that is. Was this being recorded and will be sent out? Thank you for the incredible content. Yes, it was recorded. It is being recorded, and I will be sending it out, and it'll be available at least for 1 more week. And I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I've been teaching this material for so many years in person, and I realized that it's time to start to codify it, to start to have things recorded and kind of put down in this way so it can be shared. Because when I do something live in a room of 20 women, then it's just done after that. So I love that you asked that question. You want to share it. I'm so happy for this to get out there and be shared with more and more women. Another thing that's happening that might interest you is that I have a facilitator training. So once you have graduated from the program, either in person or this virtual version, you have the opportunity to do a facilitator training with me, which I just completed the first version of that a few months ago here in LA. And again, that's mostly virtual with 1 in-person immersion. Then you have the capacity to actually teach and share this. So because I want this information to get out there. I want more and more women to have access to that. And once you've gone through the facilitator training, then you're certified to actually hold your own in-person circles. Not to teach it online. I'm going to be the only one doing it online, but it's so powerful to be able to hold circles and do it in person, like in your hometown or wherever you are. And I give a lot of support to women who are facilitators and getting it out there. So any more questions? It looks like no more questions are coming through. Thank you so much for your time today and your attention and really giving yourself to this material and to the practices that I shared with you. And I want you to know that I'm available. If you have questions, you can email me. My direct email is amanda@urbangoddessretreats.com. And any questions about anything we covered, any questions about the course, questions about the scholarship application, just feel free to reach out and have a beautiful day. And just take this, whatever you absorb from this, I just offer, like, take this out and share it just in your embodiment, in your presence with other people today. All right, bye-bye.